So with the transfer window closing soon, I think we're going to be looking at all the teams that are, most of them are confirmed anyways. Maybe not all of them. Some of them could still change or whatnot. All of the most important teams are here, but maybe you could say there is a team on here which isn't as good as a team that isn't, but the most important teams are here. So that's really all that matters. At least for C and D tier, I'm not really going to order the teams, really. Maybe I'll try to order them between regions, but not the whole tier, for example. I'll try to order B, A, and S, maybe. But yeah, we'll see. And I might change which tier I put each team in by the end of the video, so just be aware of that. Let's start with Eugen, Radosin, and Mitzir. I'm going to put them in C tier. Eugen and Radosin both have made international competition, but I don't think neither of them really stood out enough for me to, be B-tier players, essentially. Mitzir, very close to making Worlds as well with BDS, I think it was. Was that Mitzir that played with BDS? I'm not sure, but generally, still, I don't think he's quite good enough to get into that B-tier. B-tier for me is really teams you almost expect, or not necessarily expect, but they could definitely be making top 8s at majors and stuff like that. So I feel like they're just outside of that. Will they even qualify? That kind of stuff. I don't really know. So yeah, they'll be in C tier, and I feel like a lot of teams in C tier, if they are from EU, they could surprise you, maybe just about qualify for a major. But generally, you'll probably expect them to be below, and maybe they could get like maybe that 5th spot, for example. Which isn't a land spot, but maybe they'll get 5th in EU, that kind of stuff. But we'll see. We'll see as well. I haven't looked at all the teams yet. So HB Tempo. Honestly, I feel like Tempo will be a hot player to look at. Acro, very established, especially with last season rides, really challenged, especially Dignitas early on in the season. But that team ended up not working out by the end. But that doesn't mean you should just forget how well Acro and his team were doing early on. So considering that, I honestly think they might even be better. So if I had to choose right now, and I'm not particularly confident about it at all, I would put this team ahead. But that could definitely blow up in my face. Then Gen G with Rice definitely should be an improvement. I don't know if they're going to be better than these EU teams at all. I don't really know, so I'm not even going to begin thinking about that. But Rice should be a bit of an upgrade, and I think as well, you've got to give it to Gen G here. Maybe with Rise going to NA and getting good results there, maybe that'll increase his confidence. Because I want to say that Mina didn't really bother him too much. He was expected to make the grand final every single event, right? So maybe in an NA he'll start improving again. In spite of his, I would say, bit of a decline in the past, couple of years, maybe 2 years. So maybe a very small decline, but or a slow decline rather. But I do think he's been gradually getting worse. Rock, probably put them C tier as well. Abdullah Ghazi, really mechanical players. Twiz, maybe a little bit worse, but yeah, still Abdullah Ghazi, very mechanical, and they're a good team. Jory said it himself. These are good players. Maybe their structural setup is not amazing, but these are good players, and considering they did sweep Gen G at the World Championship, I feel like Rock have to go in C tier. And looking at these teams, I'm going to be piling up this C tier. And to be honest, I think there's so many teams that do kind of compete around that C tier level, honestly. I think there's a lot of teams here, especially now as well with EU not importing everyone, because with the new rulings, you can only have one import player on your team. So a lot of these European players are going to come back. So that's going to increase the depth to be, much more similar to what it used to be, right? So Razir's Atomic talks, I don't know exactly where they're going to go, to be honest, but Razir's struggling in OCE, talks struggling in Mina, but though that one's a lot more excusable. And Atomic doing about what I expected in Mina, did actually overperform according to most people. I think he definitely did better than what people expected, but for me, he did about, what I thought he would. Is it going to be better than Eugen, Rados, and Mitsir, or HB Tempo, Acro? Are they going to be better? I have no idea. I feel like these players like playing with each other for some reason. I feel like this team could easily work out, but For now, I'm gonna just put them bottom C tier, bottom of the EU teams in C tier rather. I don't really know though. They could easily be top here, no doubt, no doubt about it. Cheese, Sosa, Frosty. I don't think there's a massive difference, but I am gonna put them in D tier. You know, you look at Cheese, he was kicked off of Gen G, so you gotta look at that and think maybe, you know, that's not a great look. Sosa, um, kicked off of Virtus Pro, not because he was the worst player on the team necessarily, but because Catalysm was clearly the best player on the team. So obviously, if you have to get rid of one import, you get rid of Sosa. But he definitely did better than what I expected, and he impressed me definitely with you know, that World's performance as well from Virtus Pro. He was definitely part of that, and he really did well regionally as well. So impressive from Sosa. And if he was the old Sosa, then maybe he wouldn't have, this team would have even been on the list, right? But he's really impressed me last year. So I think this team definitely should be a talking point. But I'm not sure they're much more than that. I feel like D tier is kind of a good place for them. Maybe high D tier, but I feel like there is enough of a distinction here to put them into D tier. Frosty, a player that has underperformed in the past, so he could definitely level up, but still putting them D tier for me. Then we have Astral, Mozzarella, Rust Easy. Rust Easy, a player that a lot of players are excited about. Mozzarella has been on the up as well, and Astral hasn't really declined too much to suddenly not be a relevant player. I shall remind you as well that, you know, Belgium in the FIFA E World Cup last year did make top 8, sorry, playing a very close series against Brazil. So, you know, that is a relevant result. And given the players on that team, it was Ital, Astral, and Compact, right? It's not like that's the craziest roster. So for them to make top 8 and in the group stage finishing above the Netherlands and Spain, you do got to look at Astral and think maybe he's a little bit better, hasn't declined quite as much as people thought. So, D tier still for me. It's not like I suddenly think he's gonna be insane and whatnot and whatnot. And Rust Easy isn't really that established either. So yeah, for now, D tier still, though relevant team. Catalysm, Sphinx, and Kevin. Kevin's gonna be downgrade, right? I mean, especially a pro play. Changing one player can be a big difference, especially if you're changing Sosa into Kevin. Not that Kevin is a terrible player necessarily, but he's not really been really looked at ever. You know, a lot of people won't even remember that he's been at majors in the past. So yeah, Sphinx is just that much better than anyone else in APAC locally. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put them D tier, regardless of how well Sphinx and Catalysm did last year. A Chronic Duke or Duke, I don't know how to pronounce his name, to be honest. Nico, I gotta put them C tier. How good are they gonna be exactly? I have no idea. um, let's say I might even put them above Yujin, Redos, and Mitsu. Do I dare? I'll put them in between the two. I don't really know, to be fair. Jiuk and Nico were on BDS last season together with Mitsu, and they almost made Worlds. Finished lost in the grand final against NIP, which was a really good team, to be fair. So, and then Chronic, I feel like he hasn't really declined that much. Hasn't had the greatest teams. You know, maybe he's had one really good teammate, but then his other teammate is maybe a bit less than what you'd want. So obviously not the player he used to be, but maybe similar cases Astro. I think he's not really declined that much, really. So I think still a C tier for Chronic and Duke and Nico. 2P's Wavy Talk. A tough one, because at the World Championship, they did really, really badly. And, I mean, Russell said it himself, they were losing all the scrims as well. So it's not like they were expected to do better based on, you know, anything other than regionals, right? Regionals are the only thing you can look at and say, oh, it's the NA region, they won the LCQ, so they should have done better. Well, maybe, but everything else, you know, looks towards that they haven't. They weren't really expected to do better than what they did. And if they did do better, yeah, maybe you could say they should have beaten Virtus Pro. Maybe they could have beaten MIBR, but nobody else. You know what I mean? Like they were good if they made it through the play-ins, they would have just gone out top 16. So let's say they did do worse than they were supposed to. It wasn't by a lot. So by that logic, where would I put them? You can definitely warrant them bottom of C tier. Say that they're distinctly worse than Gen G. But for me, I think there's enough of a difference between them and Gen G to say that this team has to go top of D, above Cheese Sosa and Frosty probably. But uh, yeah, they were just so bad at Worlds. They were just so bad. And I feel like any of these other teams, if they were there, they would have qualified. So based on that, like, yeah, I think it's fair. If you put them in C tier, fair. Bottom of C tier, fair. But for me, they go at the top of D tier. NRG, they won Worlds, right? So S tier. I do want to make S tier pretty exclusive. So I'll probably do it so that A tier isn't really far off S tier at all. So, S tier and A tier will have a smaller gap than A tier and B tier, for example. And probably, yeah, the differences between A, B, C, and D between all of each other, so A to B, B to C, C to D, will be smaller than S to A. Just want to clarify that because, yeah, people are going to get angry at me for teams that I put in A tier, and they're going to be like, no, that's S tier. They can win a major. And I agree. But, these two teams are definitely the S tier teams. I'm looking at the other teams here. I feel like I might not have anyone else in S tier, to be honest. Falcons, they got Drawley. They won't necessarily be better, but they have hurt the competition, which I think maybe was their main goal with signing Drawley. They have improved their regional competition, but they've made their international competition worse. So, yeah. If I had to guess, they'll be better than Energy, but who knows, really. But yeah, I'll put them ahead of Energy. Drawley, whether he's the best player or not, I don't really know, to be honest. I think it's between him and Zen, but I wouldn't be surprised if this year we're gonna have another contender. So we'll find out, I suppose. SSG definitely could be B, but something tells me that this is gonna be just another C tier team. I'm gonna put them below Gen G. I don't know. I feel like Rise will unironically, raise this team of Gen G. And Diaz, he wasn't the best player in Complexity. I'm not saying he was the worst, but I feel like he wasn't the best. Unproven still in threes at like the top level, if you will. Chronic was also the worst player on the Ultimates. Not that necessarily that's a low bar or anything. That is still like you're a really good player if you're the worst player on Ultimates. And Reveal probably for me was also the worst player on SSG. So this will still be a really good team. And I imagine they will be taking that fourth spot for NA. Third or fourth, right? I wouldn't be surprised if, first split Genji takes it, second split SSG, or vice versa. That third spot, but I feel like this won't work to me. It just doesn't look right to me. I don't know if this is, you got the same thing, but for me, it just doesn't look right to me. I don't know why. Okay, it just doesn't look right. I feel like stylistically they're gonna clash, and it's just not gonna work. Maybe not the greatest personalities as well to be playing with each other. I do question a leadership role there, which I just don't on Gen G. So yeah, I'm gonna put them below Gen G. But if you want to put them B tier, I understand the logic. Carmine Corp, this is where I start. You could definitely say if this is the same distances as between the C tier teams or C to B tier teams, then you would put them in S tier. But for me, S tier is going to be a very privileged tier with only a set amount of teams. So I'm going to put Carmine Corp A, but they're super close to S. I don't think Juicy is this completely catastrophic downgrade. They definitely can win a major. They can win Worlds with him. I think it's totally possible. Totally within range. And it's not like a miracle. Oh, they'll win and it's a miracle. It'll be like Carmine won Worlds. Oh, okay. Maybe you'll be a little bit surprised, but I wouldn't be totally surprised, to be honest. So I think A tier is fine based on that. Secrets. Drufinia for Swift. I don't think that's a massive downgrade. I'm still gonna put them C tier. I see that I don't have any Sam teams here, so I'll just put them alone, I guess. I don't think Drufinia is a massive downgrade, so yeah, Secret. They did make a top 6, so I did say top Bs when you're looking for you're making top 8s and stuff at majors, but I feel like they're really close with all of these teams in my head. They were ramping up at the end of last season. They were ramping up. They have made a switch. Maybe I should put them B tier. I really don't know. I really don't know. I mean, for you guys, do you think Swift is that big of a deal? Is Dofina that much of a downgrade, or is just stylistically are they going to be a lot worse? I don't know. I just really don't know. Should I put them in B tier? They're either like top of C tier or bottom of B tier in my head. Maybe B tier is fair. Maybe. It depends on how good Swift was. Am I underrating Swift? If I am, then I should be playing Secret in C tier. If I'm not, then B tier. No, the opposite. Whatever. I just got myself really confused. Whatever. I'm just gonna move on from the situation by just saying Secret for now, B tier. Maybe I'll move them down. Twisted Minds. I think it's enough of a distinction to put them in B tier here. Monkey Moon, I feel like will be one of the worst players in this B tier, if you will, but TRK and Alpil will be some of the best players in this tier. So I feel like naturally, they go in this tier and at the top of it as well, or near the top anyways. I don't think they'll be quite as good as a Karmine Corp, for example, but I don't think they'll be far off. Monkey Moon has been on a decline for quite a while. Last year, he didn't really have a moment, really, where he looked revitalized. The only time he really did was, or only times he did, was during NRG series. But other than that, he never really looked that good, to be honest. He did not look great last year. So, for me, top of B tier. Top of B tier. Vitality, I'm going to put them in A tier, just above Karmine Corp, but really, I think they're essentially tied for me. Exotic, just like Monkey Moon, did not have a good year last year at all. A major downgrade, I think, for him. But I think he has more to recover than Monkey Moon. I heard as well that Exotic has been dealing with, injuries with his hands, wrists, or whatever it is. I don't really know exactly, but if he's able to recover from that this year, then maybe S tier. But we don't really know. So I'm going to put them A tier. Genamates, here's my hot take of the day. Is that for the first split, I think Genamates will be the best team coming out of Europe. That is my hot take for the day. I gotta get some likes somehow, or some dislikes, actually. I don't know. I feel like Archie was, in terms of his average level, was the best player at NIP. Not NIP, sorry, GK. And then Nas and Oski were really good at NIP. For the longest time, they were playing with an Itachi that was about to retire, which, in retrospect, is more of a bad thing on Itachi than it is about Nas and Oski in reference to their results last season up until the World Championship and LCQ, of course. And considering how they did at said World Championship, I think it really shows how good Nas and Oski are at the moment. And with Archie there, I think that's definitely an improvement. I mean, you got to consider this as well. Even though Redosin did improve the team, they ended up going with Archie anyways. So, going from top 6, and now they get Archie instead of Redosin, sky's the limit, really, for Genamates, I feel like. So, A tier for me. And I've been known to be a bit of a glazer of this roster in the past. I'm not a fan of them. I was a Dignitas fan the entirety of last season. I've never been a fan of any of these players. By that, I've never supported a team that's had them on there. Archie, Nas, or Oski. So, I shouldn't have any bias, but I do seem to have a record for, overrating these players, I guess. Shopify should be going into B tier. I think they're clearly above Team Secret, though, for me. Kofir should be a good upgrade. Stylistically, you do wonder if there's going to be some problems, much like last year, to be fair. But, yeah. I think they should be still good. I think they should still be a really good team. Um, but there are maybe some. So I think there will be phases just like last year where they do lose against teams where maybe you wouldn't expect them to, or rather some wins they get that you wouldn't expect them to based on some of the other results. Whichever way you want to look at it, I guess. GK, I'm gonna put them like right behind Shopify B tier. I think that's fair. Abstract, Joyo, and Seiko. They were all good players on their rosters. None of them really stood out necessarily as being game changers, but none of them really stood out as being the reason why they were bad either, if you will. I think that makes sense anyways. So, yeah, I think B tier, fair for them. Fair for them. Furia, I'll put them like right B tier. Put them above Secret. I think that's fair. Swift, he should be an exciting player. I haven't really watched too much Secret Ball, to be honest. So I don't really know exactly how good Swift is going to be. But yeah, and Lost have been declining. So you could even argue that they should be below Secret. But I think considering the fact that they have made a change, what I think was important for them, considering how far they really stepped down to at the rear end of last season, I think this is a fair ranking for them. It's a shame is really the way they went down because they started last year quite well. Winning against Vitality to make top 4 was really good. But yeah, just didn't work out, I guess, by the end of last season. NIP, Joris, Oli, CRR. Joris, a really good player on Dig. Probably, I want to say, had the highest peak on Dig. Though Stizzy, maybe by the end, might prove that otherwise. Oli had the highest peak again on GK, I think, and CRR I think was the best player on Complexity. I'm gonna put NIP here. I think they're gonna be better than Furia, honestly. Maybe this is Sam hate, but I've got them quite highly rated, to be honest. CRR I think was the best player on Complexity. Oli, although his average wasn't the highest on GK, like I said earlier, I think I said it anyways. I think that's for Archie, but the highest peak I think it was Oli. But obviously, maybe with Joris and Oli both being known as inconsistent players, maybe that will cause some issues. So yeah. Wildcard, I don't need to talk about it too much. I'm gonna put them in C tier. Yeah, they did really well at Worlds, but we can't ignore the rest of the year, right? They still have Torsos on their roster as well, who has proven to be better than what some people thought, including myself, at the World Championship, but still, you can't put them any higher than C tier, and they'd be near the rear end of this tier as well, maybe the very end as well. So, yeah. Wildcard still winning at World Championship 3-0 against Signitas, and Furia does warrant a position for them in the C tier for me. But yeah, that'll be it for the video. Let me know what you guys think about those ratings. Did I have some really bad picks? Let me know which ones were bad and exactly why. Really interested to have a discussion about it in the comments. Let me know. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.